Hello there my friends. So initially I was going to do this as one video, but I rambled for such a long time that I'm now splitting it into two. So this is part two, basically inspired by Hayley in Bookland, who is a wonderful booktuber. I am reacting on Goodreads to the books that I have read which have the highest average rating and the lowest average rating. In part one I looked at the highest average rating, and now we're in the pits. We're in the shitter. We're looking at the bad books. And so now I'm going to change the list from highest to lowest and see what happens. And basically, I'm intrigued to see whether my ratings of books match up to the general opinion of Goodreads users. And basically see if my taste is objectively good or objectively bad. And actually, a lot of the books that I gave 5 stars had really high average ratings, so that's pretty good going. And now let's see. Okay, the first book, the lowest rated book on Goodreads that I've read is Jane Eyre, Laid Bare. This is the classic novel with an erotic twist. I feel like I bring this up all the time. This time it's not my fault. It's Jane Eyre copy and pasted, and then occasionally the author just adds in some erotica, including a scene where Rochester cuts/shaves Jane Eyre's pubes. I call it her Jane hair. It's so bizarre, and it doesn't flow at all. Like, you can very clearly see where the writing suddenly changes from Charlotte Bronte to Eve Sinclair. Eve, I expect a public apology for this. I'd like it in writing. I gave it 1 star. Goodreads users have been very generous and given it an average rating of 2.38. But yeah, this book is not good. Jane Eyre, on the other hand, excellent, superb. The next book is Love Again. I'm so pleased to see this here because I also hated this. I gave it 2 stars. Goodreads users have given it on average 2.79. So it's a kind of enemies to lovers book. It's about a girl and this kind of nightclub owner, and she hates him, but for literally no reason. We're never given a reason why she hates him. And so they have this like fake romance, and she's like falling in love with him, but she refuses to let anything happen properly. And it just doesn't really make any sense because it's essentially just a love story, but the author adds in the fact that she supposedly hates him, even though there's no reason to hate him. And so this whole book is so frustrating because she's sort of resisting like an obvious attraction, and he's actually quite nice to her. So it's just like completely unconvincing, and I don't know what the point was at all. The next book, so the third lowest rated, is Topics of Conversation. I read this as part of my video where I judged books by their covers because the cover of this book is stunning. I gave it 3 stars, which is very close to the average rating that it has of 2.82. But I do agree, I think on Goodreads, obviously you can only give whole numbers. You can only give like 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Whereas on the story graph, for instance, you can give 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, which makes your reviews and ratings a lot more accurate. And so I think I would have given this probably 2.75 and then rounded up. So anyway, that's irrelevant, but this book is a series of conversations between women, but they just aren't that interesting. And they're quite rambly and convoluted, and I don't know, it feels a little pretentious, this book. And that sort of takes you out of the moment when you're so aware of what the author is kind of like attempting to do and not doing very well. So yeah, I didn't like this book. Another book that I didn't like is Diary of an Oxygen Thief. This was trying to be Lolita and failing. I gave it 2 stars. Goodreads users gave it 2.93. I don't know what they're smoking, but I don't want it if you enjoyed this book. It was published anonymously. I can see why, because I would publish this anonymously too, just so that no one knew that I wrote it. But yeah, not good. Not good at all. It's basically written from the perspective of an abuser, but not in a clever way. The next lowest rated book is by the Jenner sisters, Kylie and Kendall Jenner. Now, I've also made a video on this book. This is Rebel's City of Indra. This book made me lose the plot because it didn't have one. They basically took every dystopia trope and idea ever, and then tried to just put them all into one story, and it's just chaos. It doesn't make any sense. When you read into it, it's actually like kind of awful because the main characters are essentially these people with incredible privilege, and they go down to lower ranks of society who they deem disgusting and kill them. innocent people going about their daily business. They kill them because they're ugly and poor. It's not a good look. It's not a good message. The Jenner sisters don't need to take it personally because they didn't actually write it anyway. And it's really funny watching interviews of them talking about it because they clearly have no idea what it's about. The next book is one I'm actually really sad to see this low down. The rest of them I've all more or less agreed with. This one I'm disappointed by. This is Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke, and the average rating of this is 3.08. I gave it 4 stars. The thing is, right, so it's a disgusting, horrifying, depraved book. It's about people bringing out the worst of each other on online chat rooms. These two people never meet, but through their messages, they are really awful to each other. And I think it's genius. I thought it was brilliant. I think that this is a case of people buying a book that they just won't enjoy. Like, if you don't enjoy reading about things that make you physically cringe and that are disgusting, then you will hate this book. But I think it's actually a sign of really good writing to be able to evoke such a physical, visceral response to something. So, I'm going to agree to disagree. I liked this book a lot. Justice for Eric LaRocca. They did what they had to do. Next we have All the Conspirators by Christopher Isherwood. I gave it 3 stars. Its average rating is 3.09 stars. I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't remember what this book was about. I wrote about Christopher Isherwood for my dissertation, so I read all of his books, and he wrote a lot of them, and they're all sort of semi-autobiographical, if not completely autobiographical. All the Conspirators is about his life in England when he was going to like boarding school, and he felt very repressed by heteronormative propriety. But aside from that, so I remember it kind of like in the context of his life and what I wrote my dissertation on, but I cannot for the life of me remember like what even happens in this book, which is probably why I gave it a very average rating for a very average book. There you go. The next book, I'm sure no one will be surprised to see, is Adulterance by Gabby Hanna. I once at a YouTube convention saw Gabby Hanna performing, and it was genuinely the most horrifying thing I've ever seen. She was like screaming into this microphone. People were running out crying. And I don't know if it was singing so much as sort of like live trauma dumping. It was incredibly graphic and just so inappropriate for the really young audience who were there. This collection of poetry, that was relevant, I don't know why I started talking about that. But this collection of poetry is, yeah, shit. It isn't good. I'm really sorry to say it. I hate to not be nice about other creators who just want to make art, but she's quite transparent about the fact that a lot of it was rushed and they were kind of filler poems to get to the deadline. A lot of it is just so basic and dumb. Yeah, I mean, there's quite a lot of discourse about this book online. I don't really need to add anything more to it. I've also made a video about it before. It deserves its place here, I think. But you know, the best thing about art is that it's great for experimenting and trying. Now, I'll never judge anyone for trying and giving it a go. Oh, actually, maybe I will. The next book is Straight James, Gay James, which is by James Franco, and again, it's just crap. I'm sorry to say. I gave this 1 star. Goodreads on average has given it 3.37, which is incredibly kind and generous. I don't know what to say. I only give books a 1-star review if I think they're genuinely not worth the paper that they're printed on. Let's move on. The last one on this list that we're going to cover is Frog Music, which is a book I actually didn't finish because I just found it so dull. It's like a murder mystery. I think the whole point of a murder mystery is that you want to know the solution, the conclusion to the mystery, and in this one, I didn't care. It was just quite dull, and I feel that a murder mystery probably shouldn't be dull, and that is why it got a 2-star from me, but Goodreads reviewers gave it, on average, 3.19. So, there you go. A lot of these I actually rated lower than their average rating, so kind of savage from me, not gonna lie. In fact, this whole video has been a bit savage. If you want something more positive, go and watch part 1, where I spoke about some fantastic books. A lot of books that I actually gave 5 stars and Goodreads reviewers generally agreed with me. I tried to veer away from overly negative content, but that's what this video has been. So, bye, I guess.